welcome to Your Favourite Teacher. Today we're looking at English language. This is a biggie, so pay close attention and make sure you've downloaded our sources so you can follow as we go. Of your entire language paper 1, half the marks are rewarded in the reading section, responding to the source text given in questions 1 through 4. And the second half are given in a single separate writing section. We're going to be using the extract from the Unconsoled, so make sure you get this downloaded before we start. Question 4 is the longest of the reading questions in the AQA Language Paper 1, being worth a total of 20 marks, a quarter of the entire paper. That's important to remember because you should plan to give yourself ample time on this question. About 20 minutes is best. To help you understand the scale of the question, it's worth 2.5 times as many marks as question 2 or question 3. Logically then, you should be writing about 2.5 times as much as those questions. 2 to 3 full pages roughly with normal sized handwriting. Really, you should be thinking of this question as a mini essay. A word which might make you shudder in fear, but will make sure that this video prepares you for it nicely. That said, don't take question 4 lightly. With 20 marks up for grabs, there's a lot to be gained here if you put in the work. In this video, we'll go over what the question requires of you, some tips on how to approach the question, and remind you how to write out a cohesive response. So far, we've been given a lot of our own free rein on Language Paper 1. Question 1 is very simple and easy to follow, whilst question 2 and 3 gives you lots of options on what to evaluate. However, while question 4 does allow you to interpret the text as you will and gives you a clear section to focus on, there's a much clearer path paved for you in this question. Let's look at the extract we have to work with before we explain how to approach that already paved path. The extract we're working with is the beginning of The Unconsoled, a novel in which a pianist has arrived at a hotel in an unknown European country to give a rehearsal, the details of which is unclear. The question we'll be working with is as follows. Focus this part of your answer on the second part of the source from line 18 to the end. Because of the order in which we answer these questions, we would already have read through the first paragraph to answer question 1, the second paragraph to answer question 2, and be well familiar with the rest of the text, including the ending, in order to answer question 3. Making sure you stick to answering the reading section in this order is important because the questions are meant to build one another. This means that it will help you by the time you reach question 4, as you already understand the text fully and can use your time to plan and write your essay instead of rereading large passages. Sticking to this order is also important because it means that by the time you get to answering question 4, the most important question, you'll have your best grasp of the text so far. And on to the next part of the question, the statement. A student having read this section of the text said, "The writer makes Mr. Ryder seem like a very important person. It's as if the rest of the hotel is there to serve him. To what extent do you agree?" We've already mentioned that question 4 paves a clear path for you, which you might think of as both a curse and a blessing. You might think the question is asking you to agree with something which, at first, you yourself might think in the first place. Actually though, these statements are usually tailored very well in order for you to find a good range of evidence which agrees with the statement. This is your main goal. Of course, you might find things in the text which lead you to disagree with the statement entirely, and that's fine. In the end, question 4, the evaluate question, asks you to evaluate the statement. That's the bit about what extent do you agree. Your job is to weigh up all the reasons why someone might agree or disagree with the statement. Don't just completely agree or completely discredit the statement. A really solid question will look at both points, for and against, and weigh up which are the most logical or believable. Ultimately though, the steps on how to answer the question are given to you in the next few bullet points. In your response, you could write your own impressions of Mr. Ryder. Evaluate how the writer has created this impression. Support your opinions with references to the text. If you forget everything else from this video, just remember this. Those 3 bullet points spell out exactly how you are to approach and answer this question. They're a huge giveaway. The mark scheme for this question shows exactly that. A level 3 question, earning from 11 to 15 marks, will do the following. Evaluate clearly the effect on the reader, meaning explain what your impression is. Show clear understanding of writer's methods, meaning explain how the author has made this impression. Select a range of relevant textual references. Again, like the third bullet point now, show your opinion with references and evidence. This means quotations from the text. Make a clear and relevant response to the focus of the statement. This is the only bit left out from those bullet points that you get in the question, but the statement has already been given to you to focus on. So let's get looking at this extract and focusing on the statement. A student, having read this section of the text, said, "The writer makes Mr. Ryder seem like a very important person. It's as if the rest of the hotel is there to serve him." So far in the text, there's not much you've missed. Like we said, Mr. Ryder, the pianist, has only just arrived at the hotel for an event about which he's not exactly sure what to expect. We'll read from line 18. As soon as I mentioned my name, what we're doing right away is looking for things which agree with the statement. For example, in line 19, at the mention of Mr. Ryder's name, the porter gave a start and straightened himself. In line 20, the porter is quick to apologise. In lines 20 to 22, the manager himself was wanting to welcome you personally, suggesting how important Mr. Ryder's arrival is to the hotel. Line 26, the desk clerk hurried through the registration forms. While we're looking for details to agree with the statement, we might also want to write down a few notes as to why we think it makes Mr. Ryder seem important. For our mini essay, we'll try to come up with 3 paragraphs, each with their own clear way of agreeing or disagreeing with the statement. From what we've gathered so far, we can definitely see that the staff at the hotel are very eager to please Mr. Ryder. Notice how all of the evidence we've looked at so far can be used to support this. The start, which the porter gives when he realises who Mr. Ryder is, the apologies he gives for not recognising Mr. Ryder, the manager himself wanting to personally meet Mr. Ryder, and the desk clerk's urgency when registering Mr. Ryder. This is the kind of range of evidence we'd need to be looking at for each of our paragraphs. As we read through the rest of the text, we'll want to make sure we have a few other points with equally as many pieces of evidence to support them. It's a good idea to write these down in the margins as you continue reading. For example, when we get to line 29, we find out that Mr. Ryder doesn't know the details of Thursday night, a night which seems to be important, making us think he isn't the most important person in the hotel after all. Or the fact that in line 44, Mr. Ryder is told not to interrupt Mr. Brodsky, another pianist, which might suggest the same. A simple note of this, writing not the most important guest in the margin, will help make that clear. Let's get back to organising the evidence we have so far. First, we'll start our paragraph by stating the ideas we had. The writer makes Mr. Ryder seem like a very important person because of the fact that the hotel staff are very eager to please him. Notice how we use the statement about Mr. Ryder being an important person in order to write the first point for our paragraph. The same can be done if you want to disagree with this part of the statement, just by adding not. Simply use the idea from the statement and add a because to explain why you think so. Next, like the bullet points tell us, we'll evaluate how the writer has made this impression. This means giving our evidence and explaining how it makes Mr. Ryder seem important. The writer makes Mr. Ryder seem like a very important person because of the fact that the hotel staff are very eager to please him. For example, as soon as Mr. Ryder mentions his name, the desk clerk gave a start and straightened himself. This could suggest that Mr. Ryder is important because the desk clerk might be shocked from not having expected to meet such a famous or important person. Readers could also think that Mr. Ryder is important or famous because of the way the desk clerk says, "I'm sorry, I didn't recognise you." The fact that the desk clerk has to apologise for this could suggest that Mr. Ryder is so famous that it would be shameful for the desk clerk not to know who he was. This could be why he apologises. Also, it could make sense for the desk clerk to have very good manners towards Mr. Ryder if he were an important person, as important people usually have a great deal of power. This could give the desk clerk trouble had he not apologised. Therefore, the way that the desk clerk reacts to Mr. Ryder once he knows it's him proves that Mr. Ryder is an important person to the hotel. In our answer, we've given a lot of our evidence, but we've also spent some time explaining why that evidence proves the statement. Notice how often we mention the fact that Mr. Ryder seems to be an important person. Some good phrases to help you explain why your evidence is valid are used in there as well. For example, gives you an opportunity to introduce evidence and prove a point. This could suggest, allows you to begin interpreting what a quote tells the readers. Readers could also think that, gives a good bridge from one piece of evidence to the next. The fact that, again, helps you introduce evidence and explain why it proves the statement. Therefore is a great way to sum up your points. Use therefore to conclude your paragraphs and make it clear you're focused on the statement at hand. Using those 3 bullet points given in the question for 3 paragraphs, each with around 2 to 3 pieces of evidence and 2 to 3 explanations as to why readers agree or disagree with the statement, will land your question comfortably good marks. Remember though, with 20 minutes total, you should use some time to organise around 3 different ways in which you will prove and/or disprove the statement. This question doesn't require you to use as much terminology as with question 2 or 3. So you can take off your language analysis hat for a moment and just go with the facts that are in front of you. Focus on those 3 bullet points and focus on proving that statement, and question 4 will reward you greatly when you sit language paper 1. Remember too, the statement does narrow your path a bit and force you to focus on the ideas it gives, but it is by no means there to trip you up. So, hopefully you have a clear idea and can try this on your own. I'm Miss Meeks with your favourite teacher, and we've been tackling the English language GCSE.